Hey everyone, I recently reviewed BLUETTI's smallest power station, the EB3A, and I wanted to see how well it stacked up to EcoFlow's RIVER Mini. So I asked them for a review unit, and they were kind enough to send one along. In this video, I'll compare these head to head and show you the pros and cons of each to help you find the right small power station for your needs. And by the end of my grueling test, one of these actually ended up completely dead. EcoFlow is the market leader because they have the trifecta of best-in-class design, innovative features, and great customer support. The RIVER Mini is the smallest unit in their lineup and is perfect for charging mobile devices or drones, running a DC fridge, and powering smaller AC appliances. It packs a 210 watt-hour lithium-ion battery, 300 watt pure sine wave inverter, high-power USB ports, wireless charging pad, 100 watts of solar input, super fast wall charging, and a slick smartphone app in a really nice looking unit that's surprisingly small and light. The wireless version I'm testing retails for $399, but you can buy it during Prime Days for $140 off at only $259, which is a massive deal. They offer a standard version that omits the wireless charging pad and car and solar charging cables, and that's on sale for only $199. The Prime Day deals are available from July 4th through 17th and are EcoFlow's biggest sale of the year, with savings up to $900 off. So if you want to snag these or any EcoFlow projects at a great price, check out my links in the description. I'll be comparing the RIVER Mini to BLUETTI's newest unit, the EB3A, which I recently reviewed. It sports an all-new design that finally ditches the slow external power brick for a fast internal charger like EcoFlow. It has a 269 watt-hour LFP battery, 600 watt pure sine wave inverter, 200 watts of solar input, high-power USB ports, wireless charging, an all-new display similar to EcoFlow's, and smartphone app control. It retails for $299, but is available for $249 during Prime Days. Spec-wise, these are more alike than different. They're both small units in the 200 watt-hour size range that cost about $250 and are best suited for charging USB-based electronics like phones or laptops, small AC appliances like fans or web routers, or running DC fridges and lights. They have similar features and capabilities, but there are some key differences. First off, let's talk about size and weight. When you put them side by side, it's clear how much larger the EB3A actually is. On paper, it's only 2 inches taller and deeper, but that makes it almost twice the volume and clocks in at over 4 pounds heavier. Now, it's still small, but the RIVER Mini feels much smaller by comparison. It also honestly has a more appealing design with rounded corners and glossy finish and a really sleek layout. Now, part of the size and weight difference is the battery itself. The EB3A has a larger 269 watt-hour battery versus the 210 watt-hour battery in the RIVER Mini. Counterintuitively, a larger battery does not necessarily translate into longer run times, but I'll get into that a little bit later. A bigger factor in the size differences is the battery chemistry itself. The EcoFlow has a typical NCM lithium-ion battery that is smaller and lighter, but is only rated at 500 cycles from 0 to 100% before the battery loses 20% of its usable capacity. Versus the BLUETTI that uses a lithium iron phosphate or LFP chemistry battery that is larger and heavier but rated at 2,500 cycles. This means that if you cycled this daily, the EB3A has a lifespan that's 5 times longer and is much safer because LFP batteries don't tend to explode or start on fire when overcharged or damaged. When you see what happened to Jasonoid's NCM battery pack recently, it really underscores the danger of this kind of battery, and I hope EcoFlow switches to this chemistry soon like they have for larger units. So if portability is your primary concern, the RIVER Pro is the clear winner, and it could be argued that for a small unit like this, portability is paramount. It's the unit I tend to grab if I'm working outside and want to keep my power-hungry MacBook Pro charged, because it's just so small and light. But if you're looking for a more modern battery chemistry with a longer lifespan, the EB3A is definitely the way to go. Honestly, size and battery chemistry are major things to consider when choosing between these two, but there are other key differences. Both have pure sine wave inverters for AC, but the EB3A has a massive 600 watt AC inverter versus 300 watts on the River Mini. But keep in mind this is a tiny battery, so it can't run large loads like that for long, and the larger the inverter, the more idle power it will use, so there's a trade-off to consider there. To test AC efficiency, I powered a fan over 5 hours and was able to pull 160 watt hours from the River Mini, which is 76% of its rated 210 watt hour battery. The EB3A output 210 watt hours, which is 77% of its 269 watt hour battery. They had similar performance, both which is a bit below average, but I think this is due to the small battery and relatively large inverters in play. Both units have powerful USB-C ports that deliver a full 100 watts to easily charge even the largest laptops, and they include a handful of standard 15 watt USB-A ports. So in this era, they're basically the same. Neither supports bidirectional USB-C charging, which is a bit disappointing. Both have 15 watt wireless charging pads on top that work great to charge my iPhone and AirPods. I didn't measure a difference in speed between the two, but did notice that the River Mini was a little more finicky with positioning and placement of the device. Both have efficient MPPT solar chargers, but the EB3A technically has double the solar input at 200 watts versus 100 watts for the River Mini. However, the Mini can accept a wider voltage range up to 39 volts, so that gives you more flexibility in the panels you can use. So I think from a practical perspective, the solar is pretty much a draw between these two units. I tested both units with this 60 watt EcoFlow solar panel to see if there was any difference in how much the MPPT charge controllers could pull from the panel. Both ended up being pretty much identical, so I would say they're equally efficient. Both units offer super high-speed AC wall charging without the need for a power brick. Just plug the standard cable into the wall and off you go. In fact, you can use the same exact power cable to charge either unit. Having an integrated charger is a first for BLUETTI, and they one-up EcoFlow by adding 3 different charging speeds in the app. There's a turbo mode at 350 watts, a standard charging mode at 260 watts, and a silent mode at 100 watts. EcoFlow only offers one charging speed, which is similar to the standard level at 270 watts, which, don't get me wrong, is blazingly fast, but I wish they offered a silent mode or a configurable level like they do on larger units. Both of these can charge up in about an hour, which is incredibly impressive. Both also support pass-through charging, so you can use the AC, DC, and USB ports while they're charging from the wall. Both had no problem at all running my real-world test, where I charged my 15-inch MacBook Pro, ran 2 different AC fans, and pulled 100 watts of regulated DC power all at once, for a total of about 250 watts. You could run this without overheating or shutting down indefinitely until the battery ran out, which is pretty much the high end of what you should expect to do with this size of power station. On paper, the EB3A clearly has better specs, but I think in real-world use, for a unit this small, I'm not sure how much of a practical difference that makes. For example, it's great you can run a 600 watt load, but it will completely discharge the battery in less than 20 minutes. So I don't know how often that will prove useful. In addition to these top-line specs, there are a few additional features the EB3A has over the River Mini. First off, there's an integrated flashlight with 2 levels and SOS, if you're into that kind of thing. It includes a pair of 5521 regulated DC outputs that can be used to connect additional appliances. And it also has a unique UPS feature that will pass through power from the wall to an AC appliance and then switch over to battery power pretty much instantaneously when the grid goes down. Now, I said pretty much instantaneously because there is a brief flash when this changeover happens that's only a fraction of a second, so it's not great for a standard PC, but it's fine for most other things. But wait, this is far from a slam dunk for the EB3A because the River Mini notches quite a few wins on its belt, including an overall better design. This just feels purposely built to be a portable companion that can easily fit into a bag, and I just really like the overall design. It also has a much more polished fit and finish with a glossy black finish, elegant curves, and a really streamlined look. I like that the charging input and the AC outlets are on the side. It keeps the front a lot cleaner and more organized. It also includes one additional USB-A port if you're into antique ports. The smartphone app has much better range because it works on Wi-Fi, so it can connect from anywhere and starts up much faster compared to BLUETTI's Bluetooth-based app. Here's an example of the startup times for both apps, and you can see it's a pretty big difference. The EcoFlow app also just has a better overall design with more settings and more information. In the app, there's a configurable maximum state of charge, so you can extend the life of the battery by not charging it to 100%. I also think the display is slightly nicer because it does things like showing the time in minutes versus hours. On the BLUETTI, it uses fractions of an hour, which is a little bit awkward. It also includes a car charging cable and solar charging cable in the box. Early models of the EB3A didn't include either cable, but I see now that they're listing the solar cable as an included accessory. But the car charging cable is still an accessory for the EB3A that'll set you back $10. Separate USB and DC output switches are a nice touch to save a bit of energy if you only need the USB and wireless charger, but not the regulated DC output. On the EB3A, there is a single button to turn all of these things on. The River Mini also has extremely efficient DC output. In my 5-hour 0.2C test, I was able to pull 202.6 watt hours of the rated 210 watt hours for an incredible 96.5% rate, the highest I've ever tested. I even reran this test to make sure I got the same result, and I did. The EB3A did pretty good in this test for an 86% rate, which is very respectable, but not nearly as good as the EcoFlow. Part of this efficiency is because there's less standby losses. So basically any power station will use power if you have the ports on. In the case of the River Mini, it has very efficient electronics, so it won't use as much power as another unit. For example, with AC power, the River uses about 8.4 watts with the ports on but nothing connected, while the EB3A uses about 12.6 watts an hour, which is almost 50% more. With DC ports on but nothing connected, they were both pretty efficient, and they only used less than 1% per hour. However, if you have all the ports on but nothing connected, the River Mini will run for 24 hours total, while the EB3A will hit 0% in just 17 hours. Even though the battery is smaller, the more efficient electronics give it a 7-hour advantage in standby time. In fact, in a real-world test running my IceCo JP40 fridge, the River Mini ran it for 13.5 hours, while the larger EB3A died in just 12 hours, even though its battery is 28% larger. So remember, specs don't tell the whole story. The more efficient DC output and lower standby losses give the River Mini longer run times than the larger BLUETTI. So both are very impressive units, but neither are perfect. So let's talk about some of the cons. So I have a few complaints about the River Mini. First of all, the gloss black case looks super cool, but is an absolute fingerprint magnet. I found myself having to constantly wipe this down with a cloth to look decent. Next, the door that covers the AC and DC inputs on the side is super hard to open. In fact, I have to pry it open with a tool like a knife every time. Next, the very small enclosure doesn't seem to dissipate heat so well, so you'll find the fans will kick on often even if it's at room temperature and no ports are on. In general, the fans will turn on more often in this unit than with the BLUETTI, even when running small or no loads, or when recharging at low speeds like with solar. Speaking of noise, the tone of the fan is higher pitched than with the EB3A, so frankly, it's more annoying even though it's not louder. I'd measured the actual sound that this makes, and you can clearly see regular spikes on the River Mini up through the mid and high frequencies, and the more even distribution of sound from the EB3A's fans make it sound more like a white noise machine. Let's talk about the handle design, because honestly it's a bit strange. Yes, it works. You can slide your hand in the back and grip it on the top, but I feel like it's not deep enough to really grip comfortably. So even though it's smaller and lighter, I found the EB3A to be easier to carry longer distances because it has a traditional handle. Next, the DC output is regulated, but at 12.6 volts, which is lower than the 13.25 volts that the EB3A is at. I was able to power all my DC appliances, including my Iceco and Dometic compressor fridges, so it may not be a problem at all, but I wish it was regulated at a bit of a higher voltage. Both output the same 10 amps. The AC outlets are very close together and actually share a ground slot, so you can only connect a single 3-prong outlet at a time. On the BLUETTI, their more traditional side-by-side outlets will let you plug in 2 grounded appliances. The BLUETTI EB3A also has some issues. First off is the screen timeout. The screen will turn off after only 30 seconds, which is just way too short. This could be fixed in a firmware update, or they could add an app setting, but for now, it's an annoyance. Speaking of the app, because the app connects through Bluetooth, its range is quite limited, and it takes a lot longer to connect each time. I also find it's not as polished as the EcoFlow app. As mentioned earlier, this has higher standby power losses that make the battery only larger on paper for the most part, because the electronics use more power than the River Mini, especially on AC. Next, the DC cigarette plug is annoyingly loose with most cables I've tried. This is a problem with many BLUETTI units because the same plugs will fit snugly on my EcoFlows. In fact, I had to invest in an aftermarket cable for $20 to get a solid connection for my fridge. Next, having the charging inputs on the front is honestly a bit awkward. I prefer it on the side, like on the EcoFlow, because it keeps things looking a lot cleaner. The fan noise on this is also a little strange. When the fan starts up, it makes all sorts of buzzy noises. Once it gets rolling, it sounds pretty okay, but just give it a listen. And lastly, the overall case just feels really large for this capacity of battery. It almost feels like a 500 watt hour unit that they took some batteries out of to hit the price point, rather than a purposefully designed product like the River Mini. And one final downside with the EB3A, it's bricked. As I was finishing this review, it stopped fully charging to 100%, and after a few more cycles, it completely stopped charging. It was stuck at 0% and would not charge anymore, even though it was registering input. I tried installing a firmware update, hoping that would fix it, and well, now it's totally bricked. I've reached out to support a few days ago. I haven't heard back yet, but it's worth noting that both units are covered by a 2-year warranty, so I'll be covered. Look, things go wrong with any product, especially new ones like the EB3A, which is why I only review products from top-tier companies, because support is incredibly important. I don't think it's worth the risk of buying from a lesser-known brand that won't answer the phone or do the right thing. My BLUETTI units so far have been problem-free, so this is my first time testing their customer service. But I can tell you firsthand that EcoFlow support has been excellent, with fast response times and quick, hassle-free exchanges when things go wrong. So when it comes to support, I think EcoFlow is the best in the business by a wide margin. I'll let you know how it goes with BLUETTI in a follow-up comment. So after thoroughly testing these for a few weeks, I see a place for both of these. If you're looking for the smallest, lightest, and most polished unit to charge your laptop, drone, tablet, or smartphone and aren't planning on cycling it hard every day, the River Mini Wireless is my top pick. However, if you're looking for LFP chemistry, higher AC output for short durations, UPS features, and better specs, maybe at the expense of size, weight, and some efficiency, the EB3A is the way to go for you. In the end, neither is perfect, but both are excellent choices. I'm curious to hear what you think about these in the comments. Which would you go with? If you want to save big on all EcoFlow products, be sure to check out the links in the description for the EcoFlow Prime Day deals and save $150 off the River Mini or up to $900 on larger units. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I have lots of exciting new products to share with you in the next few months. If you want to learn more about the BLUETTI EB3A, check out my in-depth review linked above. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Till next time.